I didn't have fear that I was going to lose it. I got to say thank you. You know, you hear this from people who lose loved ones, and they say, I'm glad I was by their side to say goodbye. You know, they had cancer, we knew it was going to happen. I'm glad I was by their side. And there was some shit I didn't give a shit about. You know, I walked around and I'm like, I don't care about that. I don't care how much it cost. I care nothing about that.
No, that's the time.
And there was some stuff that I was like, you know, so that was one crazy experience. And I realized I don't need a lot of stuff, you know, which was a beautiful thing to come to terms with. And the second thing, which is just a strange experience, which is watching your app, watching the winds. And I remember the winds changed direction, and I thought, God, thank you. I'm so grateful. And in the same moment, fully aware that somebody's watching the app going
somewhere else.
Oh no. And to have to reconcile that my good fortune is somebody else's ill fortune. And by the way, nobody wants their house to burn down to save somebody else's house. That doesn't exist. And just the paradox that there's no winners in this, that my happiness and relief and sigh is somebody else's increased blood pressure and fear. The world is unfair.
It is unfair, and that's what fire teaches you, man. It takes from everybody equally, and it's not fair. Yeah. You know, I remember the first time I evacuated, I was gone for 8 days, I think. And like after 6 days, I was just like, just burn already. I'm done. I'm just so stressed out. I'm up all night. There was no watch duty. I'm listening to radios. I'm just like, you know what, man, just get it fucking over with. I was just done. I just really resigned. I resigned myself to the outcome. It was a strange feeling.
I hope the lessons are learned. And this is the shitty thing about people, right? Which is we forget. And I remember September 11th, I lived in New York during September 11th. And for weeks, dare I say months, but definitely weeks after September 11th. Yeah, I'll say months. New York was the most incredible city in the world. Crime disappeared. There was nothing. There was no crime. Somebody who might have mugged me a week before was holding a door open for me.
Yep.
And there was this shared hardship, and we were there for each other. And you see it now in LA, the insane outpouring of love. There's also idiots and looters and people who are raising the rents on their houses because they're assholes, you know, talking about ethics over money, you know.
Fucking horrible.
Like nobody's saying you can't make money, but my goodness, like raising rents, you know, anyway. But we'll forget. And New York went back to being New York. And I remember being in the middle of it going, this is utopia and it's going to go away because we forget. We forget. And this is my fear, which is the people who are now struck by this well of emotion. I'm going to devote my life to service. For how long? I hope forever. I hope forever, but for how long? You know?
This is why I like the disaster business, because I see the best in people. I have a couple friends in the industry before I got here, and I always wondered, I was like, how do you guys do this? How do you, my friend is Jose Andres, his right-hand man.
Sure. He's
the one who lost his employees in Gaza twice. I mean, like, his nickname is actually Doomsdaddy. I gave him that name. I mean, that guy has no pilot's license, has landed multiple planes. He's in fucking tornadoes, hurricanes. He lives it, and he feels more alive at the edge of death than anyone else I've ever met in my entire life. And he embodies this spirit, you know, and he sees the best in it. And now that I'm here, I understand why he does what he does, and I'm hooked. I'm an addict.
Yeah. I see it. I've spent time, you know, I spent a lot of time with the military, with people who live these lives of service, who, as somebody said when, you know, he described a life in service as my get rich slow plan, you know, like everybody knows they're not doing it for the money, you know, like, you know, that when you sign up, and you don't have to be like your friend, the Doomsdaddy, to have that intensity. It's a shame that they call it disaster, right? Because the flip side of disaster is an inspiration and a joy and a fulfillment like you cannot experience anywhere else. There's no company, there's no liquidity event, there's no client you can win. There's no game that you can top that will recreate the feeling of service for those who need it more than you.
Very much agree. And that's what the firefighters do, man. My heroes. I mean, these people, are just, they're like no one else, will do whatever is right at all costs. And I've seen them risk their careers and their lives for the betterment of the world, and they get paid jack shit. And they are just above and beyond anyone else I've ever worked for. So it is not a boring group of people to be around. And that's just my favorite.
I'm so enamored by who you are and what you stand for. I mean, you've had success as a technologist. You've had success in Silicon Valley. You've lived the movie life, the trope, that a lot of technologists, and startups go through. You've done it. I've met a lot of people who, as a result of selling their business or going public or whatever it is, they've made generational wealth. And if you ask them, what do you do now? They say, I'm an investor. And I don't understand why people who've made generational wealth, their goal is to now make more money. And what I so appreciate about you is you've done that, you've made the money, and somebody says, what do you do? And you're a philanthropist. And you may invest, but you're a philanthropist that invests, not an investor that is a philanthropist. And I think that's really important. When I look at who you are and what you stand for, what goes through my mind is, first of all, thank you. I mean, I used your app, and I checked it like a teenager looking at TikTok, and I'm grateful, but it's more the example of who you are and what you stand for that I think is even more important than the app. Because there's a lot of other problems that need to be solved, that good people who can afford to do it and do know how to do these things or have already built a business and understand infrastructure and people and all of the things, even if they build it out of spite, like, we need more of you.
I mean, I'll take the compliment. Thank you. And I agree. And part of it is like, I'm an operator, right? Through and through. So like, I can't just sit there and invest. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I need to build things. I want my hands on equipment, machinery. I had a choice. I could like go get a yacht and travel the world and hang out with billionaires, or I could go like fight the man and change the world, right? There's nothing more thrilling than this.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting conversation because all of those folks who made that money, they had the attitude to get there, and something happens, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I have some ideas where it stops. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what is it in your DNA that how do we replicate you? I mean, we both agree on two things. We both agree that you shouldn't have to do this. Government should be doing a better job of doing it and not you, number one. And we both agree there needs to be more of you. Like, how do we raise a generation of people who, whether they achieve generational wealth or not, that service is built into how they want to live a life and grow old?
Yeah, I mean, something that really, like, I tell people that I run a nonprofit because I hate them. And what I really don't understand is, like, if you're a really good operator, why would you give your money to philanthropists who don't know how to run a business, right? Like, some of these nonprofits that I've seen, like the homeless industrial complex in San Francisco, is like one thing that really upset me about 10 years ago when I was getting involved, is like those executive directors didn't actually know each other, right? Like, the largest ones who have the largest buildings don't ever meet. And it occurred to me one night walking home after this big event that I had thrown, and I put these executive directors together, and I realized they knew each other's names and didn't know each other. And I finally realized they're actually in competition with one another. They do not want to solve the problem. And that right then and there, I was like, first of all, I'm done. I'm not working in the homeless industrial complex anymore until I can come back and make a difference. And then I realized that, like, I'm not giving money to these people. They do not know. They are not good stewards of capital. So as an operator or an investor, why am I going to invest in a failing business? Show me the outcome, right? Where is it? I don't know where it is. So again, more spite,
But this is an important insight, which is, and I hate the term not-for-profit, right? That is a tax delineation. That is an IRS delineation on a form. Of course they should be profitable. They just measure profit differently. So if your charity exists to rescue kittens out of trees, then I want to see that you're rescuing a lot of kittens out of a lot of trees. That to me is the profit, right? And so instead of calling them not-for-profit, we should call them for impact, because I want a metric, to your point. And you're right, which is, whether it's homelessness or whether it's cancer, whatever it is, they're competing who will come to their gala as opposed to working together and trying to actually cure cancer. And you're right, which is it's the worst kind of corporate competition, which is trying to undermine each other rather than cooperate. Because there is no winner in charity. It doesn't like, oh, you win cancer charity. You're I think you said it best, which is they win when they go out of business because we don't need them anymore.
That was the goal. And in the fire service, I've seen the same thing. I mean, there are a couple community groups that are FireWise, Fire Safe groups. That's what they're called. And some of them are at odds with each other. And some of them even have their monthly meetings at the same time. So you have to pick one.
It's the charity industrial complex.
It's challenging.
It's challenging.
I do not like it.
So let's take a step back. I'm a well-intentioned person who I have a wallet, and volunteering is one option, but not everybody can do that. But sometimes we like to give financially. How do I know to give to you and not to somebody else who says all the right things to me and makes me feel pretty and invite me to the gala, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? You and I are having a conversation saying it's nonsense. They compete with each other. They're not trying to solve the problem. All we're doing is telling people don't get involved. So how do we get people to stay involved? How do we get people to know who to volunteer for and who to give to?
I bet it's a great question. It's something that I want to set out to solve, right? There's a couple things going on here at Watch Duty. One of them is leaving a better blueprint behind, right? And so something we did this year in our annual report is it reads like a startup monthly update from a founder. It does not read like a bunch of pretty pictures and a bunch of nonsense and maybe some video that is a tearjerker that gets you to open your purse. What I did is I tore down our metrics well beyond what the Form 990 is, which is the nonprofit reporting form. And I really went deep. Here's how much we spend on an office. 0. Here's how much it costs to operate this thing. Here's how many dollars per page view it costs. And I really went whole hog at it and just started to go extraordinarily transparent, like no one ever does. Whether you're a public or private company, you got to be crazy to do what we're doing. And we're just crazy enough to try and do that and hopefully open the door and show people that we are impactful and your money actually goes really far. So I think that's step one. That's almost an after fact though, right? Like you want to have more money come in and that show what you're doing is impactful. But the obvious one is the reason I'm on this podcast, right?